beautiful. Beautiful.
Two days away from 100 days. That's when the football season actually starts.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Like I told you yesterday, we've signed up for the college baby stepping. We've signed up for the college football video game. You know, that used to be when the college football season really started. I think when we were in college. When I got that
game came out.
When that game came out, you knew you were right there. You could go ahead and start doing all your research and getting your teams together and figuring everything out. And maybe that'll be the way it is. Welcome in on a Tuesday morning, not a Wednesday. We'll do that tomorrow morning, but a Tuesday morning here at 107.5 The Game here. Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen, as we get you up and get you going, get you ready for an interesting day. Maybe a career-defining day. Could be. It's a big day for Mark Kingston.
Loser leaves town.
It's a big day. Big day for Mark Kingston over in Hoover, and the Gamecocks have the second game, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Some new rules, I guess, also.
I literally thought I was being pranked.
Okay.
I was going through Twitter, X. I saw a check mark. I had to check the account. Had to go to the website. I'm doing all my media literacy training. Checking, double-checking, verifying.
Validating.
Checking with sources, reputable sources, credible sources. And I think it's real.
No, it's real. I looked last night when I saw you put it on our rundown. I looked, and sure enough, there will be 2 bags at first base. The old 2-bagger. I think softball does this. I could be wrong. I feel like I don't feel like it's the first time I've seen it. We'll tell you all about that, what's going on over in Hoover today as the SEC tournament gets underway there. South Carolina, there was a D1 projection, field of 64 projection, Preston, that came out yesterday. Still had them in the Clemson regional, but bumped down to a 3 seed. As opposed to a 2 seed, so, not really a loss there. You don't really move. But a 3 seed, I'm assuming you're towing the edge of the line. You were right there at it. It'll get going this morning. Georgia and LSU will play in game 1 later on this morning, and then South Carolina and Alabama will be game number 2 this morning. Following that, I say this morning, but it'll be 30 minutes after the 9:30 a.m. start time for Georgia and LSU. So we'll talk, obviously, a good bit about that this morning. And like I said, it's kind of one of those mornings. It's one of those days that it could have a big impact on the future of the University of South Carolina baseball, depending on what direction it goes. Or am I being overly dramatic? Am I being too dramatic by saying this is a big day for South Carolina baseball?
No, I think it's fair. I mean, if you're being overly dramatic, I called it a loser leaves town match, so I don't know. I mean, this is what I'll say. I don't know anything about the future of South Carolina baseball. For this present season, this game is extremely important, and the results of this present season may determine what happens in the future.
I would venture to say today is a day that we would look back on maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 years and be like, oh, that was the one. That was the deciding day. That is the butterfly effect that sends us into 4 or 5 years later as to where South Carolina baseball sits. So we'll get into that a little bit there. Again, we'll talk a little bit about the history in Hoover as well. Not particularly great there from that standpoint. Last night, you had a little bit of some playoff hockey. Edmonton and Vancouver. Edmonton wins. I don't know if anybody cares. Did you get into it at all?
0.
0. Okay. It was
0%.
That was actually a really good series. Mm-hmm. I started following it a lot closer. Edmonton plays fast. They play physical. They're actually a lot of fun to watch. They'll take on the Dallas Stars in the next round. I also, because was waiting on the Edmonton Vancouver Game 7 in hockey, which is still, to me, Game 7s in hockey are one of the best sporting events there is. Went down a rabbit hole and watched a little Caitlin Clark in Indiana Fever and Aaliyah Boston as well.
Saw a decent amount of that game yesterday also. First time the Fever were competitive in the game, I believe. They kept the game close. Very, very tight game. Didn't turn out the way they wanted, but you can see improvements happening.
Okay. Yeah, they're a young team.
Yeah, you can see improvement happening. Another Gamecock on the court. Ty Henderson was out there. She was
Harris, yeah.
Ty Harris. I mean, she was out
Took
there.
a charge, a very controversial charge late. I don't know if you saw
What is going? The moving screen is having a moment.
I thought it was a moving screen on her. I really did. I mean, I flipped over because I'm waiting for Edmonton, Vancouver, and so I caught, I don't know, the final minute, the final 48 seconds about of it, and yeah, I actually thought she was moving. She was a moving screen. They ended up going with calling it a perfectly legal screen, and she made her free throws, and they went up, and then Aaliyah Boston had an opportunity at the very end on a layup, a right-handed layup that she missed. I mean, just flat missed. Should have made it for her, and well, I don't know, but that was the most I've watched. I'll just tell you that. That minute was the most WNBA I've watched, and yeah, it was interesting, I guess, nonetheless, to see what was going on. Announcers didn't know the rules of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch that at the very end?
No, I missed that.
They
part.
weren't sure on the subbing rules.
Oh yeah, they were definitely. It's funny you say that because I did hear that part, and they were basically saying like, they were trying to accuse the coach of malpractice. Why isn't Caitlin in the game? Oh my God, what is she? Relax. She's going to sub in.
The coach knows the rules.
What?
If you didn't see it, it was
Caitlin's
one of those
just sitting over there.
It was one. Yeah. There was complete dramatic freak out over the Connecticut Sun go to the line to retell the story, and
I did see that.
And they had Caitlin Clark out, and
they were doing like an offense-defense sub type of deal, right? So they were trying to sub.
And they were doing it. And so you end up with this situation where the announcers, they come out of break the huddle, they go out to line up for the free throw, and the announcers are just befuddled, to say the least. And I mean, and they're like, oh, you can't sub on a reset. You can't sub on a reset. And then all of a sudden one goes, oh, we're being told in our ear, you can sub on a reset. I was like, oh, goodness. I mean, it was something to behold, but that was last night as well. So kind of overall, kind of a quiet night. Pick up a little bit now as SEC baseball gets completely underway over in Hoover later on today. We'll get the Eastern Conference NBA Finals going as well. Celtics and Pacers here later on this evening in the Eastern Conference. So a lot to get to this morning. 803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in if you want to. Coming up later on this morning, we'll have a special guest, Chad Leapart, District 1 Athletic Director, former Gilbert High School head coach. One of the topics that we'll get into a little bit with him is the potential to adapt to NIL in high school, Preston Thorne. I want you to think about that for a second. I mean, we're trying to learn about NIL in college and figure out all this. There's an interesting article. I don't know if we'll get to it today on a new NIL deal that just was received by a basketball transfer going to the University of Washington. States that it could be around $2 million, if not a little over $2 million. Actually, an interesting article on CBS Sports about how transfers are getting more money than high school prospects, more NIL guarantees because they've done it at the college level. But we'll talk a little bit with Chad Leapart about his thoughts on high school NIL because, Preston, I thought about this last night. I was a high school athlete. You were an
athlete?
Athlete. That's the right word I used, yes. I was
Okay.
I was an athlete. You were an athlete. And with that being said, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around what I would have tried to do with NIL. Now, you were going to college. You were a recruitable athlete. There is a difference, Jen. Preston was a recruitable athlete. But with that being said, high school guys and girls being able to use their local celebrity status, is that what we want to? I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
You can catch Preston skipping lunch at the Tasty Freeze. Everybody, 2-for-1 burgers. Come eat with Preston Thorne. Second lunch period. If you can get away from the security guard and nobody finds you, I'll be over at the Tasty Freeze.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the thought of NIL in high school.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting conversation. There's probably a lot to pack up. Well, you're talking about the true meaning of NIL, being able to use your name, image, and likeness, or what we can currently have as a pay-for-play, which, high school has found ways There are things happening,
Right.
and have always been happening. I'm from Somerville, so
Yep.
people have accused us for a long time.
We wondered.
of
There's always
NI
questions.
There's always been questions about the NIL program at Somerville. So I don't know, man. It is worth having a discussion, though.
It's interesting. So Chad Leapart will join us this morning. We'll go down that little rabbit hole there. 803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in if you want to join us this morning. We'll get into some of this baseball. Preston's got some statistics that we will get into this morning as it pertains to South Carolina and Hoover. Well, it's not good, is it?
Let's just say we're focused on the present.
There we go. All right, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. You're listening to Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner. She's Jen Jensen. It is the early game. Bill Gunner for Corley Pool Solutions. It is that time of season. Memorial Day weekends this weekend. Maybe you're going to have some people over, do a little grilling in the backyard, do a little cooking out. And one of the things you might have your kids or you be doing is hopping in the pool. But if it's not clean, if it's been dirty, if it's having issues, it's time to call the pool guru, the professional. Corley Pool Solutions, 803-445-8109. They believe in providing the absolute highest quality swimming pool service at the most affordable price to you and your family. Corley Pool Solutions knows that routine pool maintenance is crucial to the daily operation of your pool and the long-term operation of the pool's system and components. So you need to make sure you've got the right people maintaining your pool. And that's exactly what Tracy Corley and his team can do. 803-445-8109. Flat rate price, including all of the chemicals. That's Corley Pool Solutions.
And taking a peek on the traffic conditions this morning, we do have one accident to let you know about, and that's I-26 eastbound. There at exit 116, the two right lanes are currently blocked, so going to have to stay left there. Again, that's I-26 eastbound, exit 116. Aside from that, no other traffic to report at this time. 86 for the high today, 89 tomorrow. Then we hit about 91 for Thursday and Friday. Friday afternoon is when maybe some stray storms will start popping in, and then a chance for that kind of throughout the weekend. Right now, though, it's pretty nice. It's 61 on the early game.
Well, I've only been here for maybe 1% of the South Carolina history, so I can't speak for.
But from like when you've been there.
Yeah, look, I think you go there and it's single elimination a lot of times, and so look, anything can happen in a single elimination game. I think most teams go there wanting to win, but also keeping an eye on the next weekend, which is very important to be fresh and ready to go and lined up for the regional, super regional in Omaha. So I think it's just a combination of all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my first statement. All right, so the first statement, the question, because we didn't have the sound. Welcome back in, Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen, early game, loser leaves town match today at Hoover. The context of the question was, what can you say about South Carolina's less than stellar history at Hoover as far as the SEC tournament is concerned? And for reference, South Carolina is 30-53 all time in SEC tournament play. For those checking the scorecard, that would qualify as not good. 30-53. Coach Kingston's counter was, well, I haven't been here for all of that time. However, that SEC is tough. Kudos to the reporter was saying, well, what about during your time, as he said. And then he went on to speak about what it's like to play in Hoover. Overall, we have not been very good at Hoover. Even when we were good, we haven't been good at Hoover.
And we're looking ahead to the next tournament.
That's the distinction.
Well, Ray Tanner, and at that time, I don't think he would. I don't know. I really don't know his own personal opinion. But at that time, there was a lot of people that believed that Ray Tanner may have not have invested a whole lot in the SEC tournament because, as Jen just said, and as you're pointing out, there were bigger fish to fry. There was a bigger tournament that would take place a week later, and to go to Hoover and exhaust your pitching staff and wear your guys out for the sake of winning the SEC championship, the SEC tournament championship might not have been worth the ultimate goal when you could essentially go play a few games, get on back home, get a little rest, get ready for it. Obviously, under Ray Tanner, hosting a regional by and large, the majority of the time, not all the time, but the majority of the time, and be ready to go. And the results in the Ray Tanner era speak for themselves. South Carolina very rarely has gone to Hoover needing to win to secure a spot in the NCAA tournament. This is not the norm. This is an anomaly. This is why people are upset, because South Carolina is playing today with a whole bunch on the line. If you lose today and you don't get to the double elimination, you very well may have ended your season. Who knows? I feel like they're going to get in, but who knows? The bottom line is a win today, and you feel like potentially you've secured maybe yourself into the SEC tournament. So, is it worth it? It's always a really interesting question when you go over there and you think about playing potentially Tuesday through Saturday, Preston, consecutive games, no rest, and then you'd have to come back, you'd have to get yourself ready and turn around and play a regional. I know that these are used to be 18 to 22-year-olds, but now with COVID, there could be 25-year-olds, 18 to 25-year-olds, but
young adults.
They're resilient. You'd say they'd be able to bounce back. but is it really worth it? Has it always been really worth it going there in South Carolina's position and we'll say giving it your best effort?
I think that's the nuance that we're talking about for the rest of the tournament. For this team, I don't think there's a question.
Right.
They haven't earned the benefit of the doubt to be able to say, oh, well, we were just trying to wait for the postseason to turn it on. They have not earned that, especially in the last, 7-game streak, 10 games overall, the back end of the season. They haven't earned the right to be able to say, we're resting or we're trying to get ready for the – there is no next thing ahead of them. I think it would benefit them to try and get into a rhythm, get the bats going, get the pitching rotation settled, and try and win as many games as possible. Maybe to set themselves up for better positions in the postseason. It looks like I think hosting is
that's not happening.
That's not happening. All right, so we can take that off the table.
That is safely out the door.
So we'll take that out the table, but maybe they can get up to a 2 seed or get themselves into a better region. So yes, they have to go out and try and win every single game that they play. And plus, it might make them feel better about themselves. If they can come out here saying that they're SEC champions, that they made a deep run, that might boost their confidence.
Well, there's some numbers right now that are, well, I guess not good is the best way to, just the easiest way to describe that. And again, a lot kind of happening right now as it pertains to South Carolina baseball. But the losing streak, the 6-game losing streak that they are on, slightly unprecedented. That hasn't happened since the late 90s. This is not a good area to be in going into the thing. You're right. This team right now, my question is, where are they at mentally? So where are they? I know where the fan base. I get it. I know where the vast majority of the fan base is. I understand where the fan base is and what the fan base is feeling. My question is more so: is this baseball team ready to? Can they fight a little bit more, or have they looked around and been like, "It's time to hit the lake. It's time to make some trips to the beach. I got summer ball lined up somewhere. I'm going up to the Cape. I'm staying here in town." Like, if they just decided that's what they're looking at.
Well, yeah, I think that's the biggest issue. So you said a second ago the word resiliency is a popular word now, and it comes up. Coach Kingston made reference to the team being resilient, and I would say I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how resilient they are. Could they just be in a downtime? Could it be an opportunity for them to bounce back? Absolutely. But the idea of us automatically assuming that these guys are a bunch of resilient guys, we don't know that. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to see that. And to your point, we don't know where they are mentally. He says everything is good. He says that everything is great in the dugout. Everything is going well. This could just be a down spot. That could be possible. We're not there. The only way that they, unfortunately, will be able to prove that is by going out and winning maybe maybe 1 or 2 games, not just one game, because one and done is not going to be enough. I don't know what we classify as making a run. It's one of our conversations we have to say. But they probably, for their benefit, for our benefit, for everybody's benefit, probably need to make a run in this SEC tournament.
Dylan Eskew will get the start today for South Carolina, but according to John Whittle, it looks like it'll be kind of a Johnny Holstaff approach, much like South Carolina tried to do on Saturday over in Knoxville, not Hoover, but over in Knoxville when they took on Tennessee. So it'll be Eskew getting the start early on. And as we said, you're coming off of a 3-game series, not a whole lot of rest. So how you go about handling the pitching staff today is going to be very important to then setting yourself up for the rest of the week.
Wanted to go back to that because that is very important, but I don't want it to be my words. Here are Coach Kingston's words talking about the team's resiliency.
I keep getting asked, how's the team doing? And the people asking that generally, if they saw how this team practiced today, if they saw how we are on the bus, if they saw how they support each other in the dugout, the questions wouldn't be asked because this team is very resilient. Kids are much more resilient than I think we all give them credit for. They know what we've been through. They know the gauntlet that we've endured. This team is playing as hard as they can. They're supporting each other, and there's been no hanging your heads or moping. Look, they're disappointed when they lose games. We all hate to lose, but this team is resilient, and this team continues to look forward to getting to the ballpark every day.
It's not that I don't know. He's right. I don't go watch him practice, and I don't watch him get on the bus, or I don't obviously watch him on the bus. But there's a difference between, I mean, Preston, you go back, and I remember they were tough times when you suffered through those 2 5-game losing streaks to end 2022 and 2023. 2002, 2003. You guys were probably not in bad moods. It wasn't like you showed up like, oh, and you got to. That didn't mean that mentally, though, you were where you needed to be.
Correct. Yeah, I think you can
mentally check out.
We've all done, but at this point, they've all done sports long enough.
Right.
That they can come to practice, put on the facade, show up, rah-rah, cheer each other on. But what happens when you get up by a couple runs, per se, the Tennessee series, and then you blow that lead? We don't see practice. We don't. But we did see in the game, we did see the temperature change with the team once that lead was blown. Or once they lost. I won't even say blown the lead because it's 3-0. That's just a regular baseball game. It's going to be an up and down. It seemed as if when they got ahead, yes, everybody was up on the dugout. Everybody was cheering. When they fell behind, it was a little bit less of that.
Right.
I don't know what you want to call that. We know we are not at practice. We only go by what we see. Unfortunately, the results haven't matched up what they're seeing at practice.
Alabama, obviously, much in a similar position to South Carolina today as they enter this SEC tournament. Again, a winner today will at least advance to take on Arkansas. Congratulations. That is your reward for winning today. That game would also be an earlier game, not a morning game, but an earlier game as opposed to an evening game. I remember it felt like for years South Carolina would end up with one of these exceptionally late, like midnight starts in Hoover.
And the weather. It's going to be a weather delay at some point.
Yeah. But beautiful weather all week, and somehow rain will pop up in Hoover to push these things back to midnight. But it's 30 minutes after Georgia and LSU. Georgia, LSU, first pitch set for 9:30 a.m. South Carolina and Alabama, 30 minutes after that game. And if they win, they would, again, have the earlier game tomorrow against Arkansas. That would also be 30 minutes after the 9:30 game. Kentucky actually enters as the 3 seed, Arkansas the 2 seed, Tennessee the 1 seed, and Texas A&M as the 4 seed. We'll continue talking about this. We'll also get into a little bit of G.G. Jackson. Not bad for him, huh? G.G., yep, solid.
Pretty good.
Yeah, well, we'll talk a little bit about that. You're listening to Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen. It's the early game.
I-26 eastbound after I-77, the two right lanes are currently blocked. So be careful if you're approaching that and maybe allow a little extra time. As far as your forecast goes, we're going to see sunny conditions for the next few days, actually till about Friday. 86 for the high today, 89 tomorrow, and then 91 Thursday and Friday with those stray storms are possibly coming in on Friday. And then we're looking for chances for storms, afternoon and evening storms really throughout the weekend and into Monday. But right now, it's a nice start to your morning. The sun is coming up, and it is 61 on the early game.
Eight zero 404 if you want to weigh in this morning. G.G. Jackson, oh boy, so much debate, so much hysteria around him in his one season at South Carolina and then decision to turn pro. And at least Ross Geiger last year about this time had it right. This is from a podcast with Ross Geiger looking ahead to, this is about this time last year, talking about G.G. Jackson going into the 2023 NBA draft.
There's one, I'll let you guys chime in here before I get to G.G. Jackson, but he's another total wild card to me, but we'll talk about him in a minute.
Okay, I look forward to that because I think that's going to be my guy in this year's rookies class. I've already teased our listeners with G.G. Jackson as a steal later on in the first round, and if he goes to the second round, it's a crime in my book.
He would go to the second round. It would be a crime in Ross Geiger's book, and G.G. ends up being named to the second team all-rookie team after signing originally a two-way contract with the Memphis Grizzlies. And if you're the Grizzlies now, you kind of look around. All right, you get Ja Morant back to kind of help out. They've still got Jaren Jackson, who's a very solid power forward, and you got G.G. Jackson, who this year, 48 games played, 18 games started. He averaged 14.6 points per game. We'd like to see him get those rebounding numbers up a tad, just 4 rebounds per game, but a very solid rookie year for the former Gamecock, G.G. Jackson.
Yeah, by the time he actually finished playing, he was averaging 20 points a game in his last essentially 20 appearances. So he was somebody who was contributing. But what's fascinating about this is that Memphis, they should all be at home looking at Minnesota and say, that should be us. That was supposed to be them.
Right.
They took out Minnesota. Obviously, Ja had his issues off the court. Then he gets injured. Then they just don't have the same
Only
team.
had them for 9 games.
Right.
Only had them for 9 games.
Never had them together. And they have all these players, as you just mentioned. They have to get back in the saddle. Not sure they was expecting Gigi to be here, but he's here. They have a solid starting 5. As I'm looking to have 5 dudes who have been named on the all-rookie team over the past 5 years. They have a nice young core, which we all knew, but now somebody's gonna have to step up and take a leadership role. Where you see Ant-Man basically leading that team, Ja failed to do that for his team, and he's gonna have to take up that mantle.
Grizzlies will have the 9th pick in the draft next month, which it's a very weak draft. I mean, this is not a good draft.
Which is fascinating because I know Gigi was in a hurry, and he made the right choice. But if he would have hung around for another year, he would not be going in the second round of this year's draft. He'd be a first rounder, possibly the lottery guy that people were projecting him to be initially.
I actually talked with one of the scouts that's now in the NBA with the Spurs, and we were actually talking about this draft compared to last year's draft. And he said that there's probably about 10 to 12 players that had they stayed going back to college or stayed in the G League or whatever they just were in this draft, if they were just in this draft, probably would be either 1 or 2. And he said that's how weak this draft was.
What do you mean? You mean 1 or 2?
Yes, that would have pick. Yes, obviously,
Wow.
Victor Wembanyama would have been number one. So
course.
you take him out. Miller definitely would have been number one. Scoot Henderson for Portland would have been number one in this draft. Amin and Azur Thompson probably would have been 1 or 2. That's where you start getting Anthony Black, another year in college, former Arkansas point guard. Probably would have been the number one pick, is what he said. There's another young man from France that got drafted by the Pacers. Probably would have been 1 or 2. That's what this draft is. Like, it's not. It is a very wild NBA draft that, from the standpoint of talent and the fact that, again, Dalton Connect is probably the most ready to come in and really help. The rest of them, you're taking flyers on and just hoping that they kind of pan out over the course, is what I understand from a few of the scouts that I still talk to that work in the NBA, that used to do college scouting and that now work with different teams. And it's just a draft where you may see teams try and trade out, actually, to try and acquire draft picks in in upcoming years.
That's fascinating, because when you look at the rookies of the year who have been rookies of the year over the past time, obviously Big Vic. So we're going to see what the Spurs end up doing with him. Paolo Banchero with the Magic.
Right.
That seems to be paying off. That seems to be working well. Scotty Barnes with the Toronto Raptors, I guess. I don't know if you remember, his head coach said that Scotty Barnes should be an MVP candidate. Everybody was like, I don't know about that. Then you have LaMelo Ball with the Hornets.
He can't stay healthy. He's had all kinds of issues there.
Luka Doncic, 2019, was a rookie.
Yeah.
He got his team to the Western Conference Finals. So if you have somebody that hits, then you have an opportunity to make some things really, really, really happen, which, by the way, thinking about Luka's only 24 years old.
He's a young guy.
That's fascinating.
And that makes it more fun to have Luka and
Kyrie,
Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, so you have Luka and Anthony Edwards, these two young guys, and who would have thought that Kyrie's going to be the sage, wise old veteran, basically being the Batman that he should have been his whole career. He's kind of figured out that that's where he's best. But back to GG Jackson, the point is they have a young squad with Memphis. It's a team to watch. However, that Memphis team should probably be where Minnesota is now, to be honest, if Ja did not derail that team's course. And I will 100% put that on Ja, because we've seen Anthony Edwards at Minnesota be the young guy and basically take on the leadership role with that team. So Ja's going to have to figure that out.
Well, it sets up well for GG, who next year will be more of a full-time player. Again, 48 games played this year, 18 starts, and you expect him to see those minutes rise. Now for him, it'll be ingraining himself more into the NBA. He did what he wanted to do. He got to that contract. He's got the two-way contract. I don't know how that'll work here in the offseason with him in terms of what they want to do and the fine details of the contract. But certainly for GG Jackson, it looks like the plan has succeeded.
Yeah, however bumpy it was, it didn't go the way everybody thought it was going to go, but it seems like the plan is landing, and that's good. Great for him, great for his family. Congratulations to him.
803-404-6100. That's how you can weigh in. No J.C. Sherbert this morning. We'll carry you through here for the next 2 hours, and then we will get into some high school discussion with Chad Leapart, athletic director over District 1, coming up here in about the 8 o'clock hour. We'll go back to Hoover when we come back. There's 2 bags.
Is this real?
This is real. This is happening. Be prepared today when you see this. Preston Thorne will explain. You're listening to Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen. It is the early game. roughly set. Pregame about 1:15 today. And then we will have right here for you South Carolina and Alabama, the single elimination game today in Hoover. Winner advances to take on Arkansas, the number 2 seed, tomorrow. And again, that game will be set for the earlier portion of the day, 9:30 the start time there in Hoover, and then the games will be 30 minutes after each one, after the others conclude. So we'll kind of keep you updated on that throughout the day with the SEC tournament. Again, the very first game of the day, set to start at 9:30 this morning, will be the number 6 seed Georgia Bulldogs taking on the number 11 seed LSU. Winner of that game advances to take on Kentucky. But again, when that game wraps, 30 minutes later, it'll be South Carolina and Alabama later on today. 803-404-6100. One of the things that will occur is, I don't know if dumbfounded is the right word, but you were taken aback by two first bases. Is that the proper English?
Bases. Bases. Yeah, I wasting time scrolling Twitter, I saw something which I saw a picture of, and I looked at it. It said
we have multicolored bases, by the way.
Yeah, very different colored bases. There's a white one. There's a green one. I think that's what they're going to be using. I'm not sure. That's the picture that was stated on the SEC website. But I had to go through my whole process of trying to figure out, is this a real thing? Is this a hoax? Is this a joke? Whatever the case is. So it does appear as if for the tournament, the SEC will be implementing the use of a double first base on an experimental basis throughout the SEC baseball tournament, which, again, shows you how much they actually value the tournament.
That happens at the beginning of the season,
right?
That
shows you how much they value the tournament. I would say let's put this at maybe some beginning non-con games. But anyway, and I'm just reading this directly off the SEC website. The purpose of the double first base is to reduce collisions between the defense and the batter runner at first base. It has been utilized in a number of SEC non-conference contests this season. And then it goes through the guidelines for using the double first base. And I got to be honest, it seems pretty simple. I don't think it'll be that big deal, but there are about 4 or 5 different stipulations that change the game in a very pedestrian way. It's going to change the way it looks just from going out without boring everybody going through each intricate detail. I don't think it will change the actual gameplay, but it will change the way the game looks.
Yeah, just asking.
Can we go through them?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so the first thing, a batted ball hitting or bounding over the white portion of the bag is a fair ball. A batted ball hitting or bounding over the green portion of the bag without touching the first bag is a foul ball, okay? So if it hits the green part, foul. But if it hits the white part, fair, okay? When an initial play is being made on the batter runner at first base, the defense must use the white section of the double base, and the batter runner must use the green base, except in the case of a drop third strike. After a drop third strike, if the fielder is drawn to the side of the green base, the runner would go to the white base and the fielder would go to the green base. On a drop third strike, the fielder and the batter runner may touch either of the white or green bases. That was a little lengthy.
Feels like the umpire now has to be kind of like an airport, traffic controller. Like, you got to have some flags out as they're coming down.
I was gonna say, do you need a double umpire now?
One watching the base, one making the call.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: usually on the drop third strike, they usually go inside, but sometimes you go outside. Well, so I don't know what you actually. No, let's continue. If there is a play on the batter runner and the batter/runner, that's a more correct way to say it, touches only the white portion of the double base, and the defense appeals prior to the batter runner returning to the first base, it is treated the same as missing the base. Here's the part that I got to. If you get the first base, then you just use the white base. That's all I got. If you actually make it to first base and you're safe, we're clear from here on. So there's no longer using the other base. Yes, that seems confusing. Talk about players being resilient. They'll figure it out. I would say maybe not the SEC conference tournament would probably not be the time to implement this.
It goes to the point that we're talking about in this situation in which, yes, the SEC tournament is for experimental baseball. And South Carolina does not show up at the SEC tournament with a good record. But then again, what is this tournament now? It has meaning because if you lose, it may end your season. But normally when South Carolina shows up, much as like Georgia is doing today or a few other teams are doing this week, what is your effort level as a coach? Because again, I don't really want to burn through my pitching staff and wear them out this week. I think baseball is such an odd sport in terms of there's a fine line between getting a little bit of rest and also losing your momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, let's go play 2 9-inning scrimmages and then we'll get back to our own beds in our own town and get ready for hopefully hosting a regional. South Carolina's not doing that. They're playing for their life right now, but that's typically been the attitude, I feel like, especially under Ray Tanner.
That could benefit South Carolina. Let's say they get past Alabama in the first game, then they go to Arkansas. Arkansas is not throwing their best pitcher.
Right.
So they could have a chance to maybe make a little run when everybody else is not trying to. And listen, all the games count just the same. There's no asterisks by them. So I don't know if they weren't trying, but I think it would be a benefit for South Carolina trying. But, yes, this is happening. So if you turn on the game today and you see
two first bases,
it's okay.
Well,
you're not being pranked.
We'll see how it goes. Again, game set later on today. We'll talk more about that, get into a few other things. Preston wants to get into some quarterbacks. It's the flip of a coin, is it now?
Listen, it's tough to draft quarterbacks. I'll say that.
Well, we'll get into that. You're listening to Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen, Tuesday morning edition of the early game. Bill Gunner from Old Timey Meat Market, where their business is built on the idea of providing Lexington, Irmo, South Congaree, the surrounding areas with a non-grocery store meat buying experience. That's why I love going there, is because of the way they talk to you, the way they treat you, the way they get to know you. Go visit one of their 3 locations yourself and find out just how friendly their butchers are at Old Timey Meat Market. South Congaree, St. Andrews Road in Irmo, or the Lexington store. Whether you're looking for steak, whether you're looking for chicken, whether you're looking for pork, whatever you're looking for, salmon, you're going to find it, and you're going to find an incredible selection of it. Their customers will tell you, and myself included, Old Timey Meat Market has the absolute best selection, again, of beef, pork, poultry, even seafood. It's a quality selection that is a cut above the rest. So go visit one of their 3 locations today, South Congaree, St. Andrews Road, or the Lexington store. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
I-26 eastbound after I-77, right there at exit 116. The two right lanes are blocked at this time, so going to have to stay left and expect some slowdowns there. Again, that's I-26 eastbound after I-77. That forecast we're looking at, pretty nice. 86 today, 89 tomorrow, 91 for Thursday and Friday. We won't really see any rain chances until about Friday. And then chances for rain and afternoon and evening thunderstorms will continue really throughout the weekend. But looking pretty decent again for the next few days. We'll take those sunny skies. It's 61 right now on 107.5 The Game.
Seven a.m. on a Tuesday morning as we get you up and get you going. Baseball here later today, South Carolina and Alabama from Hoover, Alabama, where, again, Preston Thornton, you had the stats, you had the numbers?
Yeah, well, without analysis, not good.
Right.
Okay, but if you want some actual numbers, overall, South Carolina is 30-53 in all-time SEC tournament play. Now, Coach Kingston said, well, he hasn't been here for all of that. Correct. Last year, they were 1-2 in last year's tournament. They beat Georgia to start off, and then they've lost to LSU and Texas A&M pretty handily. And they were last season, they were in a very, not as bad, but they kind of ran into a slide at the end of last season also, where they were hoping to go to Hoover to sort of build back the momentum that they had. It wasn't as drastic as it's been this year, but this seems to be a reoccurring theme of having to go to Hoover to try and build up some momentum, and that's traditionally not been South Carolina's approach to this SEC tournament.
And that's part of it. South Carolina, I don't know if it's it is an elimination game for the SEC tournament. I don't know if it's a season elimination game. Preston's called it a loser leaves town, Matt. It might be. It very well might be. And yesterday, Mark Kingston talked about his confidence in making the NCAA tournament. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no precedent for a team having 13 wins, having a better than 30 RPI, and not getting in the NCAA tournament. They're going to pick the best 64 teams. We have a 19 RPI. The teams that we have played that also have 13 wins in our league, we were 6-3 against this year. The resume is very strong. It's just we happen to play the best schedule in the country. Played 18 games against the top 7 teams in the RPI. It's a ridiculously hard schedule. We endured it, we survived it, and we still came out the other side with a 19 RPI. So that's a slam dunk NCAA team.
Okay, but doesn't Georgia have a tough schedule and Tennessee has a tough schedule? Okay, that's all.
Correct. You can't see. My head is nodding like a dog.
Right. Yeah, I know.
We do have a live stream you can go and check out. You can see that. You could have seen that. You just go to YouTube and search the Game TV radio, and you would have seen Preston nodding along with what Jen was saying. He's not wrong. It's just I get it. That's not what people want to hear. They don't want to. As a coach, I don't think any coach also wants to go and have to defend his team's resume like this trying to get in. But that's where they are. And that's the problem.
Yeah, that is the issue. And the only problem with there not being a precedent is that there always has to be a first. So there's only precedent until somebody breaks the rule, breaks the precedent. By not winning this game today, they are putting themselves squarely in the position to be a note on trivia. So, yes, there is no precedent to this point because teams that have 13 wins in this RPI always qualify. 5 years later, they're going to say, except this one team.
That one time.
That one time. And you don't want to put yourself in a position to be the team that is that one time. And unfortunately, a loss today puts them in that squad. They still might get in for sure, but it puts them more so in that conversation.
Yeah, and again, we've talked a lot about this in terms of what South. The crazy part, I was going to say, we've talked a lot about this, but the crazy part is 2 weeks ago, prior to Georgia, we weren't talking about, can they get in? It was they were in, and it was more of, okay, what can they do against Georgia and what can they do against Tennessee to maybe secure hosting as a top 8 seed? And now we sit here today, and things have changed dramatically for South Carolina baseball, and it's going to be very interesting to see. Again, to me, it's about where this team is mentally. Because, quite frankly, they could lose today, and even if they get in, Preston Thorne, but they're mentally checked out, you don't need to go to a regional and get embarrassed. Is this team still mentally into playing baseball? And just for the record, you heard Mark Kingston talk about it. Alabama today, I'm looking at the NCAA.com website, the RPI rankings. Alabama, 33 and 21. South Carolina, 33 and 21. Alabama, number 18 in the RPI. South Carolina, number 19. I mean, this is the NCAA tournament committee may as well fix popcorn, set up a little mini bar, have this game on maybe with multiple angles, all views of the two bag first base. Again, you can't draw this up where two teams are more even right now, trying to find their way into the NCAA tournament.
Jen, can we get clip number 3 again, just so we can hear Coach Kingston speak about the team in case folks weren't, if they're just tuning in. Here's Coach Kingston talking about where the team's...
The resiliency
and the team's mindset.
I keep getting asked, how's the team doing? And the people asking that generally, if they saw how this team practiced today, if they saw how we are on the bus, if they saw how they support each other in the dugout, the questions wouldn't be asked because this team is very resilient. Kids are much more resilient than I think we all give them credit for. They know what we've been through. They know the gauntlet that we've endured. This team is playing as hard as they can. They're supporting each other, and there's been no hanging your heads or moping. Look, they're disappointed when they lose games. We all hate to lose, but this team is resilient, and this team continues to look forward to getting to the ballpark every day.
And I applaud them for the effort, and I don't question their effort. I don't question their effort, but I've seen bad sports teams play with great effort.
That is a great point. I think we're under the assumption that if a team is losing, there must be something wrong.
Right.
Aside from maybe they're just not good enough to win games. And that could be a possibility, too. You could be trying as hard as you want and have a good attitude, but maybe they just don't have the pieces that they need to win. That's yet to be seen. The argument against that was they've won games earlier in the season, and through the quote-unquote gauntlet, they were competitive early. My only counter-argument to that, and where I just think I just lean on baseball being such a game of momentum, and at the end of the season, they sputtered into the final end of the season.
And it's interesting because I want to say going back to the Arkansas series, Preston, somewhere in there, we rattled off the next several series. I never forget doing it. It's been odd because we looked at it, and I want to say I'd have to go back and look at South Carolina's schedule because I can almost pinpoint about the day I mentioned it, and I rattled off the final 5 series. It was A&M, Arkansas. Oh, then you play Missouri or something Kentucky. Then it was Missouri and Georgia. I was like, there's your 2 breather series. Well, all of a sudden, Georgia got red smoking hot, and have moved themselves up into being a top 10 team. And that's what you wanted South Carolina to do, was to get red hot like that. Because, again, I'm trying to think, it was somewhere around the end of April, the mid of April, that South Carolina was going into a series. Again, it might have been the Florida series. I'm going back and glancing at the schedule real quick. I think they were going into Florida. Well, you got Florida, then you get Arkansas, who's number 2, then you got Kentucky, who is number 4. Oh, and then you get a breather. You go to Missouri. And then you kind of have another breather. Again, this was it's like, oh, then you have another kind of breather. Georgia at home. That should be a winnable series. Well, it has turned out where Georgia turned into a top 10 team and Tennessee was number 1 in the country. You still have to play those games and finish against them. I do wonder if what Jamie Bradford said yesterday was true. If South Carolina, say, had played a Mississippi late in the season and won a series, and instead of losing 6 straight, they were 3-3 in their final 6 or something like that against a lesser team, if we would feel this way or we would just shrug off what has become some major pitching issues. I'll get there.
You can shrug it off, and that'd be on us as fans. It's just very difficult to look past consecutive losses, regardless against whom they're against. That's not for us to determine. And yeah, as you just said, Georgia was playing one way, and then they turned it up a notch.
Right.
South Carolina was playing one way, and they've turned it down a notch since then. That's the difference between those two teams.
803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in. I see some of y'all doing that. John saying Will Muschamp of baseball, always an excuse. And then Taylor in Myrtle Beach, sounds like Kingston is politicking. Oh, he is. No, you got that 110% right. He's look, he knows what he's doing. He's putting it out there. He's making sure that any audio clip, in case there's a member of the baseball selection committee that's listening, is like, oh, he's right.
There hasn't been a team.
Yeah,
there is a precedent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 6-3 against what he said. What was the one? He was 6-3 against somebody. I don't know. I guess the other teams that were. Yeah,
he moved a week around.
That was a lot of statistics.
He started a week in like Wednesdays. Like if you really look from Wednesday to Wednesday, we've been undefeated.
I like Mark Kingston, so I hate doing this, but I do wonder if he had that script and he stood in the mirror before the interview and read it to make sure he hit all the high notes.
Listen, man, I am 100% for arguing for your team. You should do everything you can through the media, but most importantly, you know what you probably need to do?
Win.
Yeah.
Win.
That's the easiest way to get all of this accomplished.
Not go on Twitter and tell fans to relax.
Whoa.
Mark Kingston didn't do that, for the record. I don't even know if Mark Kingston has Twitter, to be honest. But
he didn't, but
a coach may have done that, but we will get to a lot of that. 803-404-6100. We'll get to the Love Chevy phone lines. We will get into some football talk as well. We'll discuss a little bit about Spencer Rattler and drafting a quarterback. You're listening to Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Jen Jensen. You're listening to the early game. We are slowly wrapping up the month of May. You've heard us give all of our countdowns going on, and right now, as we wrap up the month, there's a lot to celebrate. Graduation, end of school, and, of course, those summer months, and you probably want to celebrate in a clean home, and that all starts by calling Zerorez Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning. Get the pros out there to your house today with their patented ZR Water technology, scientifically proven to keep your carpets, rugs, tile, upholstery all cleaner for longer. Right now, mention me, Bill Gunner at 107.5 The Game, and get 3 rooms of carpet clean for only $129. You can book online, ZerorezColumbia.com, or you can make the phone call, 803-262-4020. All you need to do is mention me, Bill Gunner at 107.5 The Game, and you'll get 3 rooms of carpet clean for only $129. Make sure you give Zerorez Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning Pros a call today. Zerorez, spelled backwards or forwards, is the right way to clean.
still have a bit of a slowdown on I-26 eastbound there at exit just after I-77. That would be exit 116. I'll get that out yet this morning. Again, that's I-26 eastbound after I-77, exit 116. Also, I-77 northbound right there at mile marker 4 over the Congaree River on that bridge. Lady Street at Main Street, an accident there, and Park near Laurel right there at Elmwood, also an accident in downtown Columbia. 61 right now, but it's going to be 86 today, 89 tomorrow. Then we hit 91 for Thursday and Friday before rain chances coming in Friday afternoon and possibly some rain throughout the weekend. But right now it's pretty nice. It is 62 on the early game.
$7:18 as we get you up and going here on a Tuesday morning. Talking a little baseball. We'll get into some football coming up here in a minute. Chad Leapart, Lexington District 1 Athletic Director, set to join us in the 8 o'clock hour. We'll get into some different stuff with him. One of the things that I want to get into is the discussion that is taking place a lot now as it pertains to NIL at the high school level. Not at the college level, at the high school level, where you really start to question the amateurism of players if you're talking about 10th, 11th, 12th graders are able to go out and secure local deals. You know, you think about, you go to, especially baseball, I think more about baseball, but you see like in the outfield, sponsors to help teams, and they'll have maybe their sign in the outfield. What if you got a player who's picking up that sponsor? maybe not the local high school. NIL at the high school level, I haven't really given a whole lot of thought to it. That's an interesting and weird conversation. I've got a daughter who next year will go into ninth grade, which is kind of another thing. Like she's not that kind of athlete, but to think about, like, my daughter could be like, yeah, let me go down to the local, hamburger place, and as you said, come join Preston Thorne. Skip class and come see Preston Thorne at Tasty Freeze.
Second lunch only.
We'll talk about that with Chad Leap. We'll also get into some high school football and a few other things as well. 803-404-6100. Let's get out to the Love Chevy phone lines. Gamecock Larry wants to weigh in this morning. Gamecock Larry, how you doing? What's on your mind?
Well, I'm doing okay, I guess. But have they named the starting pitcher yet for the day?
Dylan Eskew. Dylan Eskew will get the start today.
But he just started Saturday. He didn't pitch much, but that shows you just how bad our pitching staff has gotten. And then again, we only got one player in the SEC all SEC team, and that's second string. That's Cole Messina. That's how bad our team has gotten. I got a call at 12 o'clock last night from Root Hogg up in Baldwin, Georgia, and wanted me to find out who was starting pitching. He heard it was Dylan Eskew. Now, that man's up somewhere in Baldwin, Georgia, worried about who the starting pitch is. That's how much he worried about this Gamecock team. I must be honest with you. I hate to say it, but if we don't win at least 2 games in the SEC, we don't deserve to go to be in the postseason. We do not deserve to be in the postseason. They say we play the top teams. We play the top teams, but we lose to most of the top teams. 500 record. We should be better than that. They say we done this and we done that. But we played the top team. The last 5 weekend series, top 5 or top 10 teams. We should be one of those top 10 teams. We should have won more games than we won. This, I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it again. I don't care what we do the rest of this season. We need a change. We need a change.
All right.
Our Gamecock reputation is gone. I know it's been a long time, but we need to be. We should be better than what we are. We need a change. Tanner, get out your checkbook and pay for another 2 or 3 buyouts. Get rid of them. Get somebody in here that know what they're doing. Bring Holbrook back.
Oh.
Put Money Lee back. Anybody. We need a change. Go Gamecocks. Love y'all.
Oh. We've hit that stage with Gamecock Larry where it's anybody.
Break out the checkbook, man. If you break out the checkbook, I'll give it a shot.
Do you think there's a big checkbook, that big checkbook in Ray Tanner's, like
Kinda
the big one?
You know, like when you win a
When you
prize,
get those big
like
checks.
the big check.
Yeah.
I like the break out the checkbook fan. That's becoming one of my top fans. Break out the checkbook. Is there a big checkbook in his office and it's behind glass? And you just,
And break glass if necessary in emergency.
Also,
Break glass.
with these ADs getting younger and younger, you think Graham Neff at Clemson has a checkbook?
You know,
Yeah.
it's probably it's a debit card.
He's
or
like,
a
I got to
Venmo.
break out the big debit
Yeah.
card.
Yeah.
I want to see this checkbook.
The new young guys
Is
don't
it the
have
little
checkbooks.
small one that has the little check wallet? You know what I'm talking about? It's got the little leather cover, and you open it up. It's got a little Gamecock emblem in the upper left
And there's
corner.
it's like 0001.
Coach Tanner breaks out the checkbook, and Chance Miller's like, Coach, what is that? I don't know what this is. What is this? What are you doing?
How do you do that? It's funny. I was actually at a vet's office yesterday and mentioned something about checks, and she was talking about how an older gentleman was trying to fill out a check and he couldn't see very well, so he was trying to fill it in, and they said, oh well, here, we'll say Courtney, she'll fill it out for you. She didn't know how to fill out a check because
Yeah.
a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
I actually wrote 2 checks yesterday.
That's the line of demarcation. How often are you writing checks?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how personal I want to go with what I was writing checks for. Let's just say that there were reasons I wrote checks yesterday. I still write checks so that there is a definitive, that person got paid.
I will say, if it's something that I have to mail, I'm a little more skittish about because I had an identity theft situation. So I am definitely more cautious about checks unless I'm
Really?
handing it directly. That was a big deal. The guy ended up in jail.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
Yeah, where are you taking us now?
I just wanted to hear Coach Kingston talk about his strategy for Hoover. This is clip number 2.
A little bit, yeah. I think that the biggest indication of why that has been really good for us this year, if you look at our midweek games, including in North Carolina, we gave up 1 run doing that. So I think it's something we need to look at, again, as we get into the postseason where it's going to be win or go home. We have to be creative. Right now, we don't have 3 lockdown weekend starters, so we've got to be creative. And having guys go through the lineup one time is a good way to do it because guys have been successful that way.
I just wanted to give Coach Kingston a chance to rebut.
Okay.
Gamecock Larry.
It's funny. Craig in the live stream says Tanner has Apple Pay.
Oh. Apple Pay.
I don't know. Shout out to Coach Tanner. I feel like Apple Pay might be a little bit much for him. He might be
I got that stuff, Terry. Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal. I got to admit, I know how to use it. It's not that it's confusing. I just stuff for some reason terrified technology. 803-404-6100. Let's go back out to the phone lines. Alan wants to weigh in on baseball. Alan, how you doing? What's in your mind?
I knew you were going to do this to me, Will. How in the world do I follow up with that? Good morning, guys. I got a quick question about this baseball thing, and I don't know if anybody has mentioned this, but bear with me before you fall off your seat when I say this. I think the boys are tired. Okay, and I've watched a lot of baseball already this season. I see a lot of sluggishness. What do you think about shortening the baseball season? Not the conference schedule, but the non-conference schedule.
I mean, it's, a valid question. I mean, look, they've played it for a long time. They've obviously done this for a long time. I've never really thought about baseball in that manner of shortening the season a little bit. I think they're fine, but that's not a question I'd be able to answer.
We can't answer that. Great call, great observation. I think this is something that we can talk with Coach Leaphart coming in because he deals with athletes all the time. I will say this. That is very possible when you hear the difference between the guys wanting to do something and just not being able to do that. That could be fatigue, where you just can't get there. The only rebuttal is everybody else is playing the same games.
Correct.
And that's the only thing.
Well,
that's the only
and I'll say this. It's not – when you're winning and it's fun, you think Tennessee's fatigued right now?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I think they're fatigued, but they're
Kentucky,
winning.
Tennessee, I mean, you've been – again – I didn't play at the collegiate level, but when you're winning, you kind of don't notice the fatigue.
Correct.
Right?
That's what I'm saying.
When you're losing and you kind of look around, you're like, man, this is kind of got to go back to the ballpark. And that's especially in college, especially now. We talk about it's kind of neat when you're playing baseball and you don't have school for a month, and you're kind of out and you wake up and you're more like a professional player. Not so cool when your buddies are packing a cooler and going down to either the river,
the beach, the pool,
and you're like, I gotta go to practice.
You
today.
just look at that Instagram reel. You're like, BP at 8:30. All right.
Yeah, I mean that's now when you're winning, that's cool.
Yeah, of course, because they're looking at you.
Yeah,
they're like, oh man, what are those guys gonna do in Hoover? But now everybody's attention's otherwise. So I do think that's a really interesting point, an interesting observation. And it could be a possibility. My only rebuttal is that, as you just stated, everybody else has played the same amount of games. But I really would like to get into that conversation with Coach Leaphart because he deals with all of these athletes. And it's one of my personal concerns is that we just play too much of everything all the time, playing games, practicing. I don't know if we need to do all that, but that's a whole bigger topic.
Ooh.
And especially the deal with, on top of that, they're students. So there still is an academic
Don't go down
requirement.
that path.
Well, but it's true. A professional baseball player, that's a long season too, but they're able to focus on their conditioning and all of that. They don't have I've got to do this assignment. I need to do this essay. I've got this exam. I don't know.
Wasn't it Cardell? Was it Cardell Jones? What was his line? I didn't come to play school.
I didn't come to school, yeah.
Is the Ohio State education kicking in? But I can't remember the exact line, but it was something to the effect of he made it clear he was not at Ohio State for the diploma or the schooling aspect. That was Cardell Jones. I'm 95% sure. We'll continue on that. Alan, appreciate the phone call. Good hearing from you there. 803-404-6100. We'll roll on. We'll get into some of that football discussion on Spencer Rattler. It is the early game. Bill Gunner for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder with First Palmetto Bank. That time of year where you start thinking about the summer, you start thinking about the back end of the year, and maybe you're thinking about purchasing a brand new home to get 2025 started and off on the right foot. I know it's crazy to say it that way, but good grief, we're almost halfway through 2024. So what are you been doing when it comes to your house? Are you thinking about refinancing? Are you thinking about building? Are you thinking about buying a brand new home? If you're thinking about building, Jacob Crowder and First Palmetto Bank, they have a no-nonsense construction loan that'll fit your needs. For more information on it, call the Mortgage Guru today, 803-719-1005, or you can email them, the letter J, Crowder, that's CROWDER, at firstpalmetto.com. First Palmetto Bank, locally owned and operated right here in the Midlands, and that means local decision makers, which means quick and precise underwriting. So call the Mortgage Guru today, Jacob Crowder, 803-719-1005. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
Well, we do have a couple messes out on the highways right now. Still working on cleaning up I-26 eastbound there at exit 116. That's right there, I-26 eastbound at I-77. 2 right lanes continue to be blocked. I-77 northbound just before that Alex Sanders Bridge that goes over the river. Mile marker 4, the left lane is blocked. Enterprise Parkway at Platte Springs Road, an accident there. And we do have 2 accidents in downtown Columbia. Lady Street at Main and Park at Laurel. 86 will be our high today. Then we get to 89 tomorrow, 91 on Thursday and Friday with a chance of rain coming in Friday afternoon or evening. It's 62 right now in the early game.
$7:35 as we roll along on your morning here on your Tuesday morning. Lexington District 1 Athletic Director Chad Leapart set to join us from 8 to 9 o'clock this morning. We'll get into a couple different topics with him that are kind of interesting. The one that I'm kind of interested to hear, especially Preston and he discuss, is NIL in the high school ranks, not in the college ranks, but in the high school ranks. You've seen other states pass that where high school players can go out and earn NIL money prior to going to college. So we'll talk with him a little bit about that. Preston will get into a few other topics with him as well. But we've been talking a lot of baseball, obviously. 803-404-6100. If you want to weigh in on that again, game. The SEC tournament will start at 9:30 this morning. Georgia, LSU, South Carolina, Alabama will take place 30 minutes after the conclusion of Georgia and LSU, and we'll keep you updated on that. 803-404-6100. I tell you what, Jen, let's wrap this all in here together. Let's play number 9. This is Josh Pate, and he is rating the South Carolina quarterback room. Josh Pate talking about the South Carolina quarterback room right now. Lenora Sellers, Robbie Ashford, Dante Reno, Davis Bevel. Here is what Josh Pate had to say.
Now let's go somewhere where there's a lot of hope. There's no result. There's just a lot of hope. South Carolina, their quarterback room, I'm putting it at a 6.5 on the 1 to 10 scale because there's no experience. Like, there's no real proven production here, but there is so much potential. Lenora Sellers, we've been waiting on him, and it's finally his time. We were talking about him last year as if a year from now he was going to be the guy. Well, it's a year later, and he is the guy. Ton of ability, no experience. The only one way to get it, obviously. The backup situation is basically Lenore's just stay healthy. Robbie Ashford came there from Auburn. He's the backup quarterback. I don't know that, aside from him, their quarterback of the future is there, but Lenora Sellers is the here and now. He's the guy. Give me a 6.5 on South Carolina. Could easily check back in after the first month of the season and say, oh, no, that should have been like a 7.5 or an 8. Just depends on how he plays.
As I listened to that, and he went 6.5, and I started thinking, that might be generous. That might be generous because he's right. We've seen some really cool plays from Lenora Sellers. So, spring game last year, he catches it, one-handed, rolls to his left, basically chunks it downfield, looks very impressive. Great throw against Furman, I think, to Tyshawn Russell, rolling to his right. Might have been a few beverages involved in the fourth quarter, and I was ready to proclaim him as the next great quarterback ever in the history of the world. By the way, need to read a message board. There's an angry Florida State fan at Tim Tebow in Florida. I might have to go back and read that to you.
Okay.
And then Lenora Sellers had the incredible run against Vanderbilt in the rain.
He was 9 of 11 in the spring game, too.
And he was 9 of 11 in the spring game.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I listen to Josh Pate, I don't know what South Carolina's about to get. I have zero clue.
I think that's the only fair assessment you can make. We can have a lot, and I think that's fine. We can have a lot of hope. We can think things are done, but we don't know what's going to happen when the actual season starts. What's more shocking to me about that, I think that's fair. That's down the line on Lenore's. We'll see.
Right.
Hopefully, there is buzz, though, because I was getting my car washed, and the man at the car wash was talking about Lenora Sellers, and I haven't had this random interaction. I don't know what that means, that football season's getting closer or what it was, but there's maybe 2 interactions that there have been conversations about him. What I was more interested in is the outright dismissal of Robbie Ashford. And I don't know whether what that was based on. That might just be based on him not knowing anything. We don't really know anything. Obviously, he's been at a couple of different places. Has not gained a spot, so I would have questions about his ability to take on the number 1 role. But I do think maybe that backup position might be in a little bit more solid position than Josh Pate just gave it credit for. But again, we don't know.
Net loss. Like, depending on how you wanted to look at it.
I'm with you.
If you looked at last year and you said Spencer Rattler and then Lenora Sellers, and you look at this year and you say Lenora Sellers and Robbie Ashford, do you know how many passes Robbie Ashford threw last year?
I don't.
Just take a wild guess.
Minus 10?
27.
All right.
He was 14 of 27 last year.
Pretty good percentage.
Now he did throw. Really? 51.9 is a pretty good percent.
Well, it depends on what type of routes he was throwing.
145 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 2022, he did throw 250 passes. So he's not a newbie at throwing the football. But, no, I mean, Robbie Ashford's here to do what pretty much we figured needed to occur. Get a backup quarterback with experience.
This is happening.
Yes. You're glad? No.
This is the best case scenario. We did not want a situation coming in where Robbie beat out Lenore's in an open competition, whatever that means.
And you didn't want a situation in which a true freshman in Dante Reno was the backup.
We didn't want this is as good a situation as we had hoped it to be.
Right. But I'm with him, but I do think he brings up a lot of really good, Josh Pate does bring up a lot of really good points as it pertains to what South Carolina's quarterback room is. And the only thing is, Lenore Sellers is a redshirt freshman. And so Josh Pate just said in there, well, I don't know if they have a quarterback of the future in that room. Well, no, Lenore Sellers is supposed to be the quarterback of the future. He's supposed to be the guy that you're about to get 3 years out of, minimum 3 years. Yes, I don't think he's going to play 2 years and then, because it's his 3rd year, go to the NFL. I think you get 4 total years out of him, last year being the first. Now you get 3 more. But he is the guy of the future. And that's what makes quarterback recruiting, I think, even wilder in this day and age, because now you're looking at Dante Reno like, all right, you might have to sit behind him for 3 years before you get a chance. And that doesn't play well with a lot of guys right now.
That doesn't play well with anybody in the quarterback room.
No.
Not a lot of guys. That doesn't play with any quarterback who has the opportunity to play. We can go down the list of guys who have transferred from various places that are now currently playing, or we can go down the list of guys who were drafted in the NFL recently. The idea of you being a high-level quarterback and sitting for 3 years is off the table now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going back to – I know yesterday we picked on Clemson a little bit, picked on Dabo Swinney, but if you look at one of the problems that I think Dabo's got right now is – with Cade Klubnik, it's hard to go find another quarterback when they look and go, Cade, Christopher, I think it's Vazina is how you say his name out of Alabama. Well, those 2 guys were 4- and 5-star prospects. What are my odds of beating those guys out? That makes it harder to recruit a quarterback. That's the one crazy thing. Ryan Montgomery seemed to have no problem going to Georgia, knowing that you had Gunnar Stockton. They just brought in Jaden Rashad, although he committed after Montgomery committed. And you look at that quarterback room and you're like, man, that's a lot. I mean, I know there's a belief in yourself, but it's still, when you're recruiting quarterbacks, that's what makes it difficult. I think.
The belief in yourself says that I can go play somewhere else.
Right.
That's where the belief comes in. It's saying I don't need to be sitting here. So it is very difficult. And I think maybe they've done a good job of bringing in somebody who, not saying that they accept their position, but understands their roles in the quarterback room. Obviously, the younger guy is going to feel as if they should be playing now, but everybody's going to be pretty set. You know what also helps, though, is having the dude as number 1.
Right.
Because as much as everybody wanted to play last year, they all knew that Spencer was the guy. Lenoris has to establish himself as that.
And we'll talk about the dude and what he's doing, because another part of it, you look at what he could do in New Orleans, and we'll get to that. 803-404-6100. You're listening to Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, she's Jen Jensen. It is the early game. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing owner, founder Larry Leitner, and Mid-State Roofing. They've been the proven leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry for nearly 30 years, and that's why they're ready to help you today. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mid-State Roofing is there to make sure that that roof of yours is ready to stand up to any summer thunderstorm that might bring hail. So give them a phone call today. You'll speak with either an on-call technician or with a Mid-State Roofing employee. 803-356-1919. Again, that's 803-356-1919. Whether you're here in Columbia, Florence, or Myrtle Beach, or somewhere around the great state of South Carolina, Mid-State Roofing is ready to take care of you. Get you in a maintenance contract and make sure your home or your business stays dry and running long into the future. So give them a phone call. 803-356-1919. If you've got a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek. That would have been the phone number for Mid-State Roofing. 803-404-6100. That's our phone number if you want to call us this morning, as we have covered a bunch of stuff from South Carolina baseball to two bags on first base.
Two first bases. There's two first bases. So there's a lot of things that are happening as far as what is going to be going on. We're obviously talking about the loser leaves town match between South Carolina and Alabama.
And I'm curious, because this is an experiment.
Yeah.
Why are you experimenting during a tournament?
That's my biggest question.
I mean,
there is a time where you have to do gameplay. You have to figure out when you're doing it.
Pre-game, or like preseason, maybe. Like, hey, let's get used to this, because again, those are new rules, new nuances that you're having to figure out. It makes no sense. So
yeah,
I don't get it.
It seems very strange to pick this time as the time that they would attempt to experiment with this new format. But
and seeing those two bases together, there's just something I envision of. I mean, I know they're close together, but you know how a base is shaped, how there's just a little bit of curving on the end. My luck is somehow I would step in between the two, twist an ankle, or I mean, it's not a big drop off, but I don't know. It's
they're connected bases, aren't they? No, they're two. They're it's like a one long.
It is, but there's just a little. Don't you see in the picture?
In the picture I'm looking at, it looks like it's two separate kind of bases.
Yeah, they're just.
I've never seen this in real life before, so I'm only looking at
the picture. And like I say, it's not a big drop off. It's not like going off the edge of a base. But I don't know. It's just the whole dynamic on that is very odd to me.
No, in this picture, it looks like two totally separate bases.
So to me, it's not smooth across the top, so there's wiggle room.
I've never seen that. That looks dumb.
I mean, seriously,
Again,
if this was April 1st, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Every time I see it, I have to make sure that I'm checking the official website and it's on the up and up, but this is the picture that they use, so I don't know. We'll see.
Weird.
Okay, well, there you go. You'll see that a green base and a white base.
Yeah, so it's not you. Everything's fine. You haven't overserved yourself. It's totally fine.
And again, it is actually, you're right, the split in the base, it's minimal. Like, you couldn't get, I can see where, if you stepped, you could turn your ankle a little bit, but you can't get your foot in between the bases.
Correct.
But
it could just be just a little bit of a wobble, or, I don't know.
Well, we'll see all about that today. Good news. Maybe that, I don't know. They come up with some reason for that.
We got all we got is a district AD who's just saying, I got to buy more bases. I
thought they do something like that though for softball. They do. There you go. Set him up there, Coach Leapart, getting here in studio. We'll get him a headset in a minute too. Chad Leapart joining us, Lexington District 1 athletic director. They do something like this for softball though, right?
Seen that done for softball. Yes, it's not required, and to be honest, I haven't seen it in some years. But I know, say 10 or 15 years ago, that was pretty common to see the double bases like that for softball.
I didn't feel like I was crazy for seeing it, but the other point to that is why now? Why in the SEC tournament?
I can answer the why. I can't answer the why now. The why is that they're trying to prevent collisions at first base. So it's a safety issue. But the why now? Yeah, I can't answer
Again,
that.
Preseason, test it out in preseason. But you're in tournament play. My gracious.
Well,
somebody makes a mistake and
Well, you see this. College basketball's done it where they'll have these multi-team events early on, and they might fiddle with the rules a tad.
That's fine.
Just in these multi-team, but they don't do it. I mean, that's like when you get to the SEC basketball tournament, like, hey, we're going to try moving the three-point line back to now. This is different. It's a safety precaution as opposed to completely changing the rules. But yeah, it is.
But what did you read? It took a minute for you to read the rule and the application of how to utilize that green base and all of that. So that's a lot to process when you're getting towards the end of the season. Everybody's brains are probably fatigued anyway.
Right.
You know?
We'll get all that going here later on. 9:30 is the start time for the SEC baseball tournament over in Hoover, and then that'll bring up the whole other question: why is it always in Hoover? Why there? Why is it in that ballpark? Why is it not in a dome stadium when it starts raining and it pushes games back all the way to 11:30 p.m. at night, and you're playing at 3 a.m.
That will happen.
That's a given. It always rains in Hoover this time of year, so we'll get into all that tomorrow more as we see where South Carolina stands. That'll be kind of the big conversation. And again, to me, today could be a butterfly effect for the future of South Carolina baseball. You win, you get into the double elimination. Maybe you hang around for a few days. You get in the NCAA tournament. I could be wrong. I don't know this is no inside information. I don't see him being let go if he gets to the NCAA tournament. I just can't. I don't think that's what happens. If he doesn't get to the NCAA tournament, and if they lose today and they don't make it, it could change the future of South Carolina baseball moving forward.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's going to play out here very, very shortly. So we're going to see how this. We won't have to guess. We won't have to prognosticate. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, they'll go out there and take care of business today.
Former coach, you always a coach? Once a coach, always a coach? What do we refer to you? Former coach, Chad Leapart.
Always a coach.
Always a coach. Now athletic director, though, for Lexington District 1. We'll talk a bunch of different high school things when we come back. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne. It's the early game, Tuesday morning edition. Welcome in, man.
I think this one's it. Are you tired of living with chronic pain, knee pain, joint pain? Well, listen carefully, because now there are new regenerative treatments available here. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine and is now open, giving lasting relief to people with joint pain, with no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. QC Kinetics has over 100 clinics nationwide and has treated thousands of patients with incredible success. Their advanced protocols are an exciting way to manage pain from arthritis and injury without surgery, steroids, or pain pills. So if you've got pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back, you need to check out these new treatments. They can actually help your body restore and repair itself. So call now to schedule your free consultation with the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics. Call 803-281-6860. 803-281-6860. Again, 803-281-6860.
I-26 eastbound after exit I-77 or after I-77. 2 right lanes continue to be blocked is what we're told, so just allow for a slowdown there as you're approaching I-26 eastbound exit 116. Enterprise Parkway at Platte Springs Road, an accident there. Also in downtown Columbia, 2 accidents to report. Lady Street at Main and Park Street near Laurel. And we are looking for a high today of 86. Going to be 89 tomorrow, 91 for Thursday and Friday. We're not really going to see any rain or storms in the forecast until we hit Friday and then into the weekend. But right now, sunny and 62 on 107.5 The Game.
$8 a.m. as we get you up and get you going here on your Tuesday morning. Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne, Jen Jensen, and joined by Lexington District 1 Athletic Director, Coach Chad Leapart. Now, you like Athletic Director title better, or you like the coach title now that you've had it for a few months?
Well, I think either way, athletic director, you're still a coach, so I'll take the coach title is good.
Well, we'll get into a lot of stuff with this one. I know you got a lot going on, especially now with your overall title of District AD, which it's got to be a little different because you got your shirt on, you got Lexington, you got River Bluff. I'm trying to read all the little emblems there. Gilbert obviously is a part of it.
Yep. And we got, of course, White Knoll and Pillion. So 5 high schools and 8 middle schools. in our district with athletic programs.
How much more work is it as opposed? I mean, is how much you've got your athletic directors? Dustin Curtis, we've had on as a good buddy of mine. I know Gilbert has a new athletic director now, following up from you. I'm not. I actually just
Nicole Amick.
Nicole Amick. I was actually also just emailing with the new athletic director over at River Bluff, and we're hoping to have him on at some point during the summer and catch up and talk a lot about what's going on over there. Andrew Peckham is who that is, and so we're going to catch up with him. But how much more work is it now when you have to kind of handle 5? You mentioned 5 high schools and then multiple middle schools.
It's a lot as far as all the different schools that we have. So there's different things that pop up at various schools every day. And, of course, a lot of times there's things that you have no idea that's coming that's all of a sudden on the forefront that you have to work through. And but that's part of being an athletic director, whether it was just being the athletic director at Gilbert High School or the entire district. You still deal with a lot of the same things. Right now, I think the big difference is I'm working with a lot more different people and a bigger span across our district. So, but still a lot of similar things, just on a bigger scale.
So what, you were roughly 5 months in, about 5.5 months, is that about right?
That's right. Started in January.
So no better way than a little bit of controversy. At least it doesn't necessarily involve your program. You're waiting on it. What can you share with where things stand? What can you share as it pertains to this Lexington State Championship Baseball Series? I assume that's going to be Ashley Ridge. I know it's been postponed a little bit as they try to, the high school league tries to work through that, but what do you kind of know of maybe the first start time there?
Well, we're still waiting on a potential start time because we got to let this process play out. This morning, the executive committee meets at 10 o'clock, and we'll be, of course, tuned into that. And they will decide, they will hear Summerville's appeal and decide at that point whether to reject it or accept it. And, so we'll definitely be dialed in for that. And I would think, just my opinion, I think that appeal will get turned down. I feel bad for the kids at Summerville and the roller coaster of emotions that they had to go through of thinking they won and dogpiling at the end of a game and then just minutes later, literally, then going through the dejection. So that span of emotions is rough, and so I do feel terrible for them. But at the end of the day, the rule was broken, and Ashley Ridge abided by that same rule and had their pitcher removed earlier in the game when he was dealing. And so I don't anticipate Summerville's appeal being accepted. And so the next step then would be for Summerville, they could potentially appeal again to the appellate panel. And so that could drag it out for potentially 2 more days. I think that could be heard possibly Wednesday, but most likely that would probably be Thursday. So if that goes to that, then I think the earliest you could see the series starting would be maybe Friday night. And I think, it all depends on Summerville. If Summerville, whatever happens today, we'll know more after that to see which direction it's going. But certainly there's the potential for this to drag out to Friday and certainly finishing up next week. Which, we're getting on North-South Baseball is at Lexington High on, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And so you're getting into a lot of things there. And, of course, graduations this week in our district. Most schools across the state are graduating this week. I know Ashley Ridge has a Saturday graduation, which pretty much takes playing a game on Saturday off the table if it's Ashley Ridge. So, it's getting very complicated, and I'm afraid it can keep getting pushed back even further.
I think you're. I think Lexington, Gilbert, and River Bluff, if I'm thinking correctly, all graduate from Colonial Life Arena tomorrow.
Yes, that's correct. Tomorrow graduation for those 3 schools, and then we have our other 2 on Wednesday.
So I don't think there is an exact similarity, but you and I were joking off air. I do. Have you ever had a situation where an assistant had to come to you or sheepishly in the middle of a game?
Oh, yeah.
And be like, so this happened. Like, what, you got one you can share?
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites was my first time running out as head coach at Gilbert High School at the sports. It was just Sportsorama. So at the end of the day, it's Sportsorama. But it was the first time that Chad Leapart's football team, Gilbert Indians, are running out on the field for everybody to see in public. And we're out there, and we went down the field, and I had the kids fired up, probably too fired up for a sports-orama, but it was, it was the first time out. And so we actually went right down. We're playing Lexington. We went right down the field and scored, and, and looking around, and, we running the kickoff team out there, and we don't have a tee. And boys forgot the tee. And so I have to go with my hat in my hand across the field and ask Coach Stepp at that time, who was at Lexington, I said, can we borrow y'all's tee? And of course, all the assistant coaches, nobody wanted to take blame for that, so I had to wear that one, but they were all, we had a kicking coach and all that, and of course the kicker usually keeps up with his tee, but we did not have a tee, and that one was pretty funny because after the fact, I hear all the stories with all the coaches. They knew we didn't have a tee, and nobody wanted to come tell me at all.
Well, let me speak as an assistant coach here. It wasn't that we were hoping that we didn't score, but maybe it's a sports-orama. Maybe we never quite get into a situation where we need a tee, and we could just avoid this whole thing.
Offensive coordinator's calling some plays you're not aware of. Like, wait, but don't a reverse pass?
Maybe if we don't, if
I don't
nobody
even think we
scores,
practiced that.
Because there's a situation where we can play well on offense, maybe punt, and never have to kick. Everybody will never know.
Yeah, no, it's hilarious talking with some of my coaches on that staff about that after the fact and how they were all, I'm not telling him. I'm not going up there and telling him. Right.
Is that where all the defensive coaches are very happy? They're like, wonder who the offense is sending over there to.
Yeah, man, you just never know, man, because it might have been your responsibility. Yeah. I've been in that situation. I had one time where I left the headsets, and it was squarely Coach Thorne responsible for headsets. We got all the way to Dutch Fork. I got off the bus, no headsets. Had to go break the news. I had a very spirited conversation with Coach Kennedy. Love you, Coach, but
spirited?
Spirited is the word.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm guessing at that point, what did you do? No headsets for the game?
No, I mean we had to back channel, get some parents to go in there and get in the coach's office, and we got them there maybe a little bit late, but let's just say I was not fired up for that game. I was very distracted.
We'll get into a lot of that. Do want to get into some thoughts, these NIL high school rules with you and where we're going. You've been around a good bit now being a district AD and seeing everything from as you said, a bigger picture standpoint, what you think about that. It's really interesting. Preston and I were talking about because he was a recruitable athlete. I was just on the end of the bench. There was no water deal I was going to get playing for Coach Harris, but he was a recruitable athlete. You've had a couple come through during your time, so you can see that. And obviously, communities like you've coached in Swansea, Swansea, Gilbert, smaller towns that really rally around their football programs. Be very interested to get your opinion on that. Preston also wants to get into some stuff on seasons and the length of it. So we'll do a lot about that this morning. Athletic director for District 1, Chad Leapart, joining us in studio. We'll talk a lot of high school football with him as well because it's almost that time. Has Gilbert gone through spring practice yet, or they
finished up at the end of last week?
Okay. Was it different for you? Did you?
I didn't go out there. I wanted to let my man Coach Oz have it. I didn't want to be standing over his shoulder or anything like that. It's his team now, so I did not show my face.
So you're not like Nick Saban, where you have an office somewhere around Gilbert and just.
Yeah, I was not going to do that, and so it's his team now, and he needs that time to build his team, and so I stayed away.
Well, good.
Right now.
We'll talk for now. We'll talk about that a good bit as well this morning. You're listening to Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne, Jen Jensen, Athletic Director Chad Leapart joining us this morning. We'll cut up with him. It is the early game.
I got a live. Preston here. Let me tell you about my friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. So if the glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield, that's no problem. They'll come out to your location and replace it for you, usually for free, and they work directly with your insurance company to take away the headache. Yes, they will come out to wherever you are. School, home, work, it doesn't matter. They'll come out to you, give you a free quote for any job. Now, if you're looking to increase the value of your home with new windows or mirrors, Absolute Glass will come out and take care of that for you, too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. I say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. That's online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com.
Woo, things have gotten busy out there this morning on the highways. Clemson Road at I-20, also still that backup I-26 eastbound after I-77. Enterprise Parkway at Platte Springs Road still working that earlier tie-up, as well as Ermine Road at Old Barnwell. Hardscrabble near Faro, I-20 eastbound at Highway 1, of course, right there, exit 58. I-77 northbound before mile marker 4 right there over the bridge. And Jameel Road at Piney Grove Road also, you'll find an accident. 86 with some sunny conditions today. The sun continues really through Friday before we start seeing some afternoon storms being in the forecast. We'll head up to about 91 by Thursday and Friday. Right now, though, 63 on 107.5 The Game.
message boards can be a great place for discussion. I got 2 of them for you here that I'm going to read. Little message board mayhem this morning. This one actually comes from a Clemson fan, but it doesn't have anything to do with sports. So I just read it, and as we do our message board mayhem segment real quick, do you think football players really tie their own ties is the start of it? Hold on. This is from a Clemson fan. He says, so I was at a wedding on Saturday, absolutely crushing it until the wedding date. We were on the dance floor. The girl grabbed my tie and tried to pull me closer. The tie came off, and everyone started laughing that I was wearing a clip-on. I don't get the hate for clip-ons. Are they really that bad? It got me thinking, how many players on football teams are wearing clip-ons versus manual assembly ties in their pictures on the roster website? There's no way all those guys tie their own ties. It wouldn't surprise me if they has a designated tie show up on picture day to help out. You guys are football guys. How many times have you had an event where you had to tie one of your players' ties, or just go tell them, boys, clip-ons. Go with the clip-on.
Oh, I can only speak for myself. I know I'm going to let Coach speak for himself. I will say this. Yes, if it's a day where we have to wear ties, you probably will be tying 30% of those ties. That about fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've tied my fair share.
Yes, you will tie ties. All that being said, you're never going clip-on. Impossible.
I've never worn a clip. Well, I'm sure I did when I was little.
6 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Exactly. Yeah, I can see basically in like whatever room, if somebody ties those ties and then just hands them out and you just put it over their head and zip,
Something along those lines. Coach, I know you've had that same similar experiences, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's been many times where I get asked to tie a tie, or even have to bring a kid a tie, much less tie it, but have to, bring the kid the tie and tie it for them. And then you do it, in such a way that they can take it off and they loop it over their head, and then it's tied for them and it stays
right.
And then they can put it back on, wear it again next time. So, there's a way to get around those things without having a clip on.
Now, was there also a time there as coaches? I don't think in my time, because I wasn't at the school, since I wasn't a teacher, I wasn't there, but was there ever a time that maybe you were a little upset with one of your players and that tie that knot went a little tighter?
Cinch it a little bit. Make sure you Coach is on the record. We can't have Coach speak for anything that he's
So were you all anti-clip-ons?
Oh, 1,000. That might not be anything I'm stronger against.
Really?
Yeah. As an adult?
I don't know. I've never thought. I mean, I have for a person who never has no reason to wear a tie. Like, has no look at the job we have. Some days I show up here in basketball shorts and flip-flops. Like, I have a million ties, and they're nice ties, too. Like,
I'll tell you this. His date should be ashamed of herself for dating a man that wears a clip-on tie.
Okay. All right. I got one more for you here on Message Board Mayhem. Now, I want you to think about what I'm going to read. This is an interesting context here. Now, of course, this does come from a Florida State fan. He says, does it bug anyone that the media refers to Tim Tebow as a two-time national champion quarterback? He says, are we supposed to forget that he was only the backup in 2006? He seems to get lumped in, talking about Tebow, he seems to get lumped in with Tommy Frazier and Matt Leinart, which is stupid because those guys actually led their teams to 2 national championships. Here's something you never hear. In 2006, Tebow threw just 33 passes the entire season. That's fewer than Danny Cannell had in 93, but I never hear anyone calling Danny Cannell a national championship winning quarterback. Cannell even started a game that year, something Tebow never did. It's also ridiculous when publications call Tebow the ultimate winner. The guy lost 6 times. He was 35-6. Chris Winkie was 32-3 last I checked, had the same number of Heismans and national championships actually responsible for. And then they point out Jameis Winston only lost once in his career.
Did Danny Cannell write that?
I don't know, but it says Noel 961. So just there you go. There's your message board mayhem off of Message Board Genius, sponsored by the Miles Agency. Wanted to get into you with a little bit with Coach. Really interesting. And South Carolina's kind of going through it here in the spring, trying to figure out NIL for high school athletes. Your time coaching, I mean, did you ever even consider, both of you, is this something as I've been reading more about it, I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around the high school aspect of it. Is this something that you ever thought you would see coming when you started learning about NIL in college?
Well, sure. I think whenever they started doing it in college, the natural thing is everything trickles down to us in high school. whether it's schematic trends that's going on in college, that trickles down into high school ball. All the trends trickle down. So when they make it legal for NIL in college, I think that was one of the things that popped in my mind, is that this could one day be something that impacts us here in high schools in South Carolina and across the country. Right now in South Carolina, it's prohibited,
right.
But I think it's over 30 states right now.
31.
31?
31.
31 states in our country right now where it is legal, and you can have it. So how it takes shape is going to depend probably on a lot of state legislatures, and our state legislature in South Carolina, and what they allow or don't allow to it. I think that will determine how it looks in our state. I can certainly see it with your big-time basketball prospects. Say like somebody like Cam Scott at Lexington, had NIL been around here for a few years, and Cam's coming along. I could see Cam liable to have a deal with a shoe company. A national basketball recruit, I could see in high school having a deal with a shoe company through NIL if it's legal. I think that's something that you could see. I think on a smaller level, on a more local level, I think you could see small businesses sponsor kids, at programs. Like I just said, I coached at Gilbert and Swansea, small towns that love their football teams, love their athletics programs, support them 100%. I could see small businesses and things like that doing sponsorships and stuff like that for not just now teams or booster clubs, but also certain athletes on those teams. I could see something like that happening. I think one of the things that where it really could get crazy in our state, and this stuff is none of it's ready right now, but there's a lot of talk in the legislature about statewide school of choice. And so let's think about statewide school of choice, where a kid can go to school as long as they can get there, they can go there. That's something that's been up for debate a couple years now, hasn't passed, but certainly keeps getting brought up, and one day maybe it does pass. Well, if you have that, and then let's say you have NIL, you're talking about Wild Wild West in high school athletics. Then you're talking about really good high school athletes and recruitable athletes being, almost like what you see in college with the transfer portal, now trickling down to high school, whereas the schools with the big booster clubs and businesses attached to them can now build powerful high school athletic teams through that process of school of choice and NIL. I don't know if I want to still be in this if all that's going on, because that could be crazy. But you could certainly, there's the potential to go down that road if things aren't done in a certain way.
And Preston, you grew up with it, with schools being right around each other, and you've even mentioned with Ashley Ridge now. I think you said you would have gone to Ashley Ridge because when I came up, there wasn't a White Knoll, there wasn't a River Bluff. Gilbert was, I think, 2A, maybe like in 2. I mean, there was no thought of going to Gilbert. We were the school in the area. I mean, when I played, we played Airport. We had to go to North Augusta. Now Lexington is blown up where you have White Knoll, you have River Bluff, you have ALA as well. You have all these options. That's where I do think it gets really crazy, because you just said it. If you can get to the school, well, River Bluff's pretty close in Lexington. You can get there. Gilbert's growing exponentially. That's where it gets scary, and I can't believe we've kind of arrived at this potential turning point.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot, and as Coach just laid out, there's an infinite amount of scenarios, which none of many I see as being very good for high school athletics or high school athletes, in my personal opinion. But like I said, I'm from Somerville. There's always been conversations about, like, hey, what are they doing down there? How are the attendance lines drawn? Who just moved into town? Blah, blah, blah. So these are always rumors that have always been had in college and high school athletics. But I don't think that making this leap would be beneficial for high school athletes. That's my personal opinion.
When you say making this, are you referring to the NIL, or as he says?
Yeah, to the well, and that's where it's got to be a distinction, because I am in agreement that anybody who can sign a contract, is of age or whatever, and with your parents' consent, you should be able to make money off your name, image, and likeness. That's fine. However, the pay-for-play aspect is something totally different. And so that I don't agree with.
And at the high school level, the education, we joke about what's going on at college, and we joked earlier about Cardell Jones saying what he wasn't there to play school. The high school level, the education is the most important thing out of that. And if you start having kids transfer to go to school, I don't know how much they're really focused on their schooling.
Yeah, but you see that a lot. I mean, let's be honest. There's kids that change high schools all the time in our state, legally, but change schools for athletic reasons. That's pretty prevalent. I mean, we've seen high school kids. You can look at some of the recruitable high school athletes in our state, and they may have gone to 2 high schools in their career, maybe 3 high schools in their career. So you see some of that sometimes. So some of that stuff is going on. And there's ways to do it now as far as transferring high schools and things like that. And some parents are so adamant they do it the right way. They will pick up and move their home from one place to another or change their address. They will move, literally move, so that their child can attend a different school that they think is going to be better for them athletically. I think you see some of that academically as well, but of course it's the athletes that get the spotlight.
So in your opinion, is loyalty waning in high school? Because that's where it used to be. It used to be there. You had an established coach. Tim Whipple just retired at Irmo. He'd been around for over, I think, 35 years. Bailey Harris was my coach. You see some of these guys stepping away and calling it a career. And that was 24 years ago. Preston, same thing with John McKissick. You dreamed of playing for that coach that had been your local coach for that, and that loyalty there was there. It's not there anymore, is it?
Yeah, I think some of that's probably on the decline. I mean, there's obviously a lot of great coaches and programs that in our state, and they're still. Don't get me wrong. I think the great majority of all our kids in our state, they grow up in a town, and they want to wear, they want to wear the green and gold, Preston, and they want to wear the red and black, and they grow up, and that means something to them, and they want to have Gilbert across their chest when they're in high school playing football on Friday night. I think the great majority of the kids in our state, that's still what they are. They live in a town, and they're proud to be there, and they're proud to wear those colors and represent, and that's all they ever want to do. But yes, I think there's more now than it used to be of some of this where they want to chase, the grass is greener somewhere else, and they want to feel wanted, and so if this other school will take me, they feel good about it, and they can put something on social media about it, and and I do think some of that stuff is deteriorating what we've always had with that pride in being at one place.
803-404-6100 if you want to send in a question on the text line. Athletic Director of Lexington District 1, Chad Leapart, joining us in studio. We'll get into a little bit in terms of season links with him. Preston wants to get into that. Something was brought up earlier. We'll get into that discussion when we come back. You're listening to The Early Game.
And still kind of busy out there on the highways for your Tuesday morning. Clemson Road at I-20, an accident there, as well as Enterprise Parkway at Platte Springs Road. Ermine at Old Barnwell, still working on that earlier tie-up. Hardscrabble Road near Faro. Also, I-20 eastbound at Highway 1, exit 58 there. I-20 westbound at Clemson Road. I-26 eastbound after I-77. That's back to where their traffic is moving as they finish getting that cleaned up, but at least we don't have any lane blockages. Jamil at Piney Grove, Killian at I-77, and in Lexington, Old Cherokee at Old Chapin. 86 for the high today, 89 tomorrow. Right now, 63, 107.5 The Game.
$8:35 as we roll along here. Athletic Director for Lexington District 1, Chad Leapart, joining us in the studio, talking a little high school sports as we wrap up the academic and the athletic calendar year here, waiting on the appeal today will be had for the 5A state championship in baseball. Lexington set to play Ashley Ridge, but Somerville will have appeal later on this morning, and we'll have some more on that later in the week as we kind of follow that situation. But one of the things Preston brought up earlier was just the length of the seasons, and you wanted to kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I was just saying, obviously, since you've been involved in athletics, the prevalence of year-round sports has really been intensified. How do you deal with that as now not having just to worry about one sport, not worrying about all the sports for everybody? How are you managing that?
Well, I tell you, in high school, we have a pretty good calendar, I feel like. What complicates that calendar is all the outside teams. You know, you have your travel teams, you have your club teams. And so that might be separate from us in the high school, but it's still the same kids. It's still our kids. And so these kids, I mean, they really are. I mean, they could just be one sport kid. They could be a 3-sport athlete, but they really are going all year round. There's very little break. They will finish. You know, some of these kids with the state championship baseball series, they will finish this baseball series hopefully sooner than later. But but when they finish, I promise it won't be long that they'll be right back out on the diamond this summer, playing with travel teams or Legion and different things, and they're going to play all summer. And then there'll be a fall league, and then maybe they get a little break around Christmas, but then they start it back up in January, February. So. And I'm just speaking of baseball right there, but really everything is like that right now. And I do think it makes it a little more difficult for kids to play multiple sports, but we try to encourage that as much as possible at all our schools in Lexington 1, and we have a lot of great examples of kids that are successful in multiple sports, and I think that's good that they get a break from maybe their primary sport by playing something else during one of those seasons, and maybe it rests their arm if they're primarily a baseball player, or it just gives them a different mindset. And every sport brings its own strengths and experiences that can build kids and make them better athletes. So we want to encourage that as much as possible. But as far as that sports calendar, yes, it really is brutal. I mean, the high school league did a few years ago add the mandatory dead week, July 4th week, no sports whatsoever. In South Carolina. I mean, you can't even bring them in to work out. And at first, initially, I was like, oh, no, that's terrible. That's 4th of July. We really turn it up a notch going into football season starting July. We can't take that week off. And so, that was my initial thoughts. But then when we first had that week off, I said, man, this is great. And I know I can actually take the week off, and I don't have to worry about so-and-so at this school getting ahead of me by still working this week. And so because it's a rule for everybody, it was like a breath of fresh air to have that week off, and now I think that's a great thing after experiencing it for the last 4 or 5 years, that mandatory dead week. And these kids, I mean, burnout is real.
Yeah.
And, you have to manage it with your teams. Football, for instance, we've had some runs in football playoffs, and you know, that we all love what we're doing and we love football, but that grind, if you're going from August 1st and you're playing and you don't let up from August 1st and you're playing to Thanksgiving, that's a long time. And that's, as a coach, that's 7 days a week, just really, if you want to be good. And for the kids, that's 5 days. And so as you get in those playoff runs, sometimes you taper back in practice, or you change things up a little bit, or you cut back on some time here and there to try to freshen things up, keep the kids fresh, keep them, from not just wearing down so much. So there's things like that I think all teams have to do when they have those long runs. But that's the reality, though, Preston, is that these teams, I mean, these sports now are pretty much year-round, and it makes it hard.
Gilbert's growing exponentially. Again, I mentioned that there's about 1,000 houses going up between Lexington High School and Peachtree Festival Road. So you're going to see an influx of kids. You and I have talked about it, about the likelihood that Gilbert could potentially move up to 5A within the next 4 to 6 years, the next 2 to 3 realignments, because of the growth out that way. But as you were coaching, it was still a smaller school. How difficult was it when you factor in your smaller population to fill football, basketball, baseball? Lacrosse is growing into a big sport. I mean, track and field in the spring. How difficult is it when you have some of these smaller rural schools like that, when you now see travel basketball, travel baseball, 7-on-7 football?
At Gilbert, it's a great example because it's a small school. We still only have a certain number of athletes that we have to share them, and that's kind of the mentality I brought as an AD there, and our coaches there understood that and accepted that, and we all worked together. I think that's important. You know, we had several football players that played baseball, and Coach Burnett and I worked together with those kids to make, and their schedules, to make sure everything was good. There were going to be some times that maybe a kid had to miss something in the summer for baseball. They were going out to Atlanta for one of those big tournaments, and it's like, okay, that's fine. You go that week, and then I excused it as a football, and then I'd have them back. And I could give up 1 week there to have that kid play football. And then there's give and take on both sides of it. So you have to work together, and we did a great job at that, I feel like, at Gilbert, sharing our athletes and things like track. I mean, our football players, if they weren't playing baseball, then all right, you running track. And so they would run track. And we ended up having a lot of 2-sport and 3-sport athletes out there. I think as the school grows, unfortunately, maybe that becomes a little rare. Obviously the smaller schools is where you still see a lot of the multi-sport athletes. The bigger schools, it just gets so competitive to make the baseball team, say at Lexington High, or get so competitive to be a starting football player at White Knoll. Those things that kids feel like they have to focus just on that, just to get that spot on that team. And so they maybe give up some other sports. I think that certainly happens now. But I'm old school and just love to try to encourage as much as possible these kids to play the different sports.
I don't know if you're aware, right here, all-state first baseman, as well as this was a learning point a couple of years ago. But I'm with you because of the specialization of sports now. You don't see as many multi-sport athletes as I feel like we did even when I was in school in 2000.
You don't see as many, especially in, like, let's say the traditional big three, where a kid, played football, basketball, baseball. Mm-hmm. Back in the old days, that was your traditional big three sports, and you had your best athlete would play all three. You don't see that as much anymore. But what you will get is like my son, he played football, but then he wrestled, and then he did track and field. And so he's a 3-sport athlete. But, the time it takes to be a really highly skilled baseball player is a lot. And so to be that really highly skilled baseball player, it's hard to be a 3-sport athlete, to be honest, unless you're just special, and then maybe you can pull it off. But maybe for that average high school athlete, they really have to give their all to develop their skill set in baseball to make the baseball team, especially with some of the competitive teams like in our district and other places in the state. So that's just the way it is these days, and it's tough, and coaches have to understand and work together with these kids playing different sports, and they also have to understand the length of these seasons and how to manage their programs and manage the kids on their teams, and have that feeling if their team's getting tired and their team's getting burned out, and how can I spark things, and how can I rejuvenate them a little bit, and so those are all things that coaches have to do these days.
803-404-6100 if you want to text in. This morning we'll come back. We'll wrap things up with Coach Lee Park, Preston Thorne, Bill Gunner, Sheehan Jensen. It's the early game. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing. For nearly 30 years, Larry Leitner and Mid-State Roofing has been the leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry, and nothing is changing anytime soon. So if you're in need of a maintenance contract, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Mid-State Roofing will take your phone call and help get you set up. Give them a phone call today, 803-356-1919. Again, that's 803-356-1919. You can visit them on the web and learn more. MidStateRoofing.com. From hospitals to high-rises, manufacturing to industrial, Mid-State Roofing will design and install a bonded system with a protective guarantee that will keep your operation dry and running long into the future. So again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Mid-State Roofing is ready to take your phone call and help protect that roof with a maintenance contract. Give them a phone call, 803-356-1919. If you've got a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek. Bill Gunner for the Ecton Law Firm. If you're having some tax issues, if they're weighing you down a little bit, causing stress at night, now is the time to contact the Ecton Law Firm. Get a free consultation today. Eliminate that worry and stress. 803-771-9800. John Ecton and his team are dedicated to resolving your income or business tax issues for good. They understand the challenges you're facing, and they are ready to help you. That's why they've been the best in the business, and they're ready to make sure they get that stress off of you. So give them a phone call today, 803-771-9800. Set up a free consultation. Take the first steps towards a worry-free life. You can also visit them on the web. That's EctonLawFirm.com, ECTON Lawfirm.com, or again, give them a phone call and set up a free consultation today, 803-771-9800. That's the Ecton Law Firm. 8:49 on your Tuesday morning as we get you ready again. Baseball coming up later on today. Projected time around 1:15, 1:30-ish is the kind of estimated start time for that, but we'll see. Obviously, things can pick up and get going very quickly over there. But South Carolina and Alabama, we'll have the pregame show, again, roughly slated for about 1:15 today, and first pitch expected to be around 1:30, but the actual start time will come 30 minutes after Georgia and LSU play, and they are expected to get started here in about 40 minutes over in Hoover. 9:30 start time for them. So we've been talking a lot about this morning. Again, Coach Chad Leapart, athletic director now for Lexington District 1, joining us. It is kind of interesting going back to the school choice conversation and the NIL as to what you've seen it. But in your time, both of you, because it's funny, we were debating off air the loyalty and the way you've seen the evolution of high school sports. Preston, I'll start with you. From playing it for John McKissick, a legend, to coaching it and the evolution of high school sports in this state.
Yeah, it was. I've seen it evolve over time for sure. I mean, you couldn't have paid me to. There would have been a lot of money you would have had to pay me. I don't think I would have accepted it to go wear the red and black of Stratford Knights. There's no way. I'm just never would have done it at the time. And then when I got up to Columbia and started coaching, I did notice that even in Columbia there was a little bit more transiency, especially out in the district. In District 2, people did not mind going to one school or another, and that was a little bit still strange for me. And then by the end, it was kind of like, hey, man, whatever school I can play at, that's where I'll go. And that was probably the most dramatic change that I saw during my time.
Absolutely. I've seen that. 27 years in high school coaching, and I agree, Preston. 20 years ago, you didn't see as much of this moving around, and now it's just so much more accepted, and that's just part of it now. It doesn't even raise an eyebrow in some cases. This kid's moving here, this kid's moving there, and some of it is about they simply looking for the best place to get a chance to play. Some of it they think they can be recruited better at this place. Some of it is maybe I want to be a part of a winning program, and the program I'm in right now is not very good. So there's many reasons, and I think now there's a little bit more freedom to move and do that. That stuff's more acceptable. I mean, and you see it at college with the transfer portal, and it's all trickled down. They have free agency in the NFL, and then in college now with the transfer portal and the transfers that take place, and so now in high school that mentality trickles down into high school, and how can changing schools help me? And I think that's the big thing with a lot of kids and parents these days is that they worrying about themselves. That's and the team's kind of secondary, and so it's old school people. That's not right. It should be the other way around. But that's kind of the way things are today. Is people are going to look at what's best for me, and so you see that a lot with the kids moving around and stuff like that. That's what they're doing. And
was it? We talk about college coaches having to manage their roster and keeping up, not knowing. Was it getting that way for you with high school a little bit, or was it still pretty simple to have a good idea? We were talking about a particular player coming up and expecting to be pretty good for Gilbert, but was it getting a little more difficult for you to have to kind of manage your roster and keep a little bit of an eye on these things?
Well, you can't take your kids for granted. You got to recruit your players. You got to recruit
in high school.
In high school, absolutely. It's been like that now for several years. When I first got into it, that would be crazy talk. But now last several years, you got to recruit your own players. You got to sell them on your program year after year, your best players. That's just where it's at. And then also you will have kids show up at your door. We will have kids show up at my door at Gilbert all the time. I might get accused of, he's recruiting, and I swear sometimes. But if you win in high school football, parents are going to notice that. Other kids at other schools are going to notice that. And next thing you know, they're showing up at your door, figuring out how they go get to your school. So I've been on both sides of it. Right. And so that is the nature of high school coaching these days is that, you got to recruit your own. And then there's going to be kids, too, that if you're doing things right and you're winning and successful, then there's going to be the kids are going to come, too. They read the internet. They know.
Do you normally know ahead of time? Like somebody tells you, like, hey, I think so-and-so's moving into the district, or all of a sudden they're in, and you're like, oh, okay.
Both ways. I mean, sometimes people put feelers out and stuff like that they might be wanting to come talk to you about moving in, and other times it'll just be cold call. Somebody's in the front office wants to talk to you. I mean, It happens all kinds of ways.
Been a lot of fun this morning. Enjoyed having you in. We definitely look forward.
Whenever.
Yeah.
Love to have you.
Yeah, a lot of
Enjoyed
good
it too.
Maybe we can get you to get some football hands going. We can get some real football.
Yeah.
Since I know you don't get a chance to do that as much anymore.
No, I did miss my little bit of that this spring of getting out there and doing some football work. So.
I'll turn you and Preston loose then during football season. Great having you. Great having
Appreciate
you.
it, Coach.
Athletic Director Chad Leapart with Lexington District 1. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see where we stand with South Carolina baseball. 10:30 start time, by the way. Bill Gunner for AAA Heating and Air. You can beat the seasons with an incredible deal going on from AAA Heating and Air right now. Roy and Dana Finley, well, they're shaking things up a little bit. They're actually telling their customers no. All right, not in the way you might think. What they're saying is right now, if you buy a new system, a new heating and air system, you'll have no payments and no interest for a whole year. That's right, you heard right. If you purchase a brand new system here in 2024, you will have no payments and no interest until 2025. So call AAA Heating and Air today, 803-677-1500. That's what I did about a year ago, and they put in a brand new heating and air system. Kept me nice and cool during the summer, kept me nice and warm during the winter. They'll do the exact same for you. Get new comfort in your home tomorrow with a phone call today. 803-677-1500. Call AAA Heating and Air today. Get a free estimate. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.